You are listening to the Thinking Effect podcast with Orshel Green and Lillian Kriegler.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Thinking Effect podcast. Today it's episode 24, which is all about how can teachers encourage risk-taking. And for this episode we have a very special guest with us. It's Karen Tui Boyes. Hello Karen, how are you?
Hi, Orshel. I'm excited. Hello, everybody watching and listening.
Karen, can you explain a little bit about yourself? Just share what you do so people will get familiar with your amazing work.
Thank you. Well, I'm based in New Zealand, so we see the sun, the first people in the world to see the sun every morning. And I've been blessed to know that my purpose on this planet was to teach. So I taught in a classroom for many, many years, but I got to the point that I realized that we weren't serving our children the best way we could. So I left teaching, and it is now a shocking 28 years ago. I know you can't believe that, but 28 years ago, and I now have a company called Kriegler-Education. And so what we do is we work with students, teaching them how to study and pass exams. What we do is we work with teachers, teaching them about similar things that Orshel teaches, the design process, project-based learning, how to engage learners, how to use dispositions in the classroom, and my book Project Genius is about some of that. And then we work with parents, teaching them how to create roots and wings. So we really look at how do we ground our children in goodness and then help them be independent so they will leave home. I'm a total fraud. I need to tell your audience this. I'm a total fraud because I have two children. They're in their 20s, early 20s, and they're still at home. I wrote a whole book about how to get rid of them, and I can't do it.
I think that's actually a very good sign. It means you provide them with such a nourishing and amazing environment that they don't want to leave.
I'm doing it all wrong because I want them to leave. I know if I lived in South America, that would be not something that mothers would want, but we're ready for them to leave. So I run workshops, I run seminars, I run conferences, online summits. We have an online school for students who are being homeschooled, and we have a magazine. A magazine called Teachers Matter, which is a quarterly magazine which is all about personal and professional development. So that's just what I do in the weekends.
Wow. You are such an inspiring woman. Well done. It's amazing. And today we're talking about something that I believe is very close to your heart, Karen, which is risk-taking. And risk-taking is really having the confidence and courage to put ourselves in an uncomfortable or unfamiliar situation where we're trying something new. And it can take many shapes and form. If we're thinking of the classroom, it can be tackling a challenging math problem, or volunteering to that leadership role, or approaching a new student and trying to make friends with them, or sharing our ideas in front of everyone. That can be vulnerable as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think risk-taking is, there's two types of risk-taking. And when I talk about risk-taking, I'm talking about responsible risk-taking. And so this work really comes from Art Costa and Ben Kellick, who are the geniuses and the minds and the thinkers and the researchers behind the 16 habits of mind. And they're 16 behaviors of intelligent people. And what do you do when you don't know what to do? So responsible risk-taking is about, as you said, giving it a go, trying something you haven't tried before, leaping into a part where you're not really sure. But there's two types of risk-taking. And so there's the one where you venture out and try something. Maybe it's like starting a business. It's like trying to learn something new. And usually this is done with calculation, past knowledge, research. So you sort of know what you're getting into. Although if I knew what I knew now, 28 years later of being in business, I'm not sure I would have ventured out, but
That's another story.
Another story. Another podcast there. So the second type of responsible risk taking is going on an adventure, and this is more spontaneous and more willing to take a chance and do something that you just don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we're thinking about it, risk-taking has such an important role in our ability to learn and grow. I mean, if I'm just thinking about myself and how I developed different skills and how, for example, I followed my interest and passion, it all involved risk-taking. So risk-taking is really, I think, in the center of the learning experience, and we really need to encourage that in the classroom.
Absolutely. You have to be able to make mistakes for learning to occur. So, or let me rephrase it, you have to be willing for a mistake to happen. Think about the way a child learns to walk. They don't just get up and walk. They actually have to be willing to fall down. And some people are more risk averse than others. So our son he wasn't one of those ones who got up and fell down, He actually waited until he could almost walk before he even attempted. And his whole life has been like that. He waits until he can before he does, which actually in a way holds him back a lot, because he could progress a lot further if he was willing to give it a go and take that next step forward and risk falling over, metaphorically. And literally when he was learning to walk. It's about that. It's an essential key part to be able to learn how to learn, is to be able to say, hey, I'm willing to give this a go. I'm willing to be vulnerable, the word you used earlier, to make those mistakes, to maybe even look foolish, and then be able to get back up again. And while I say that, I love that phrase, and there's some contention with it. The Chinese proverb, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And people go, well, hold on, if you fall down 7 times, wouldn't you get up 7 times? If you think about it logically, that makes sense. But I believe what it means is you fall down 7 times, you're going to get up the 7th time, but no, there's going to be another one. You just keep getting up knowing you're going to get knocked down again.
Absolutely. And I think it was Nelson Mandela who said something like, don't judge me by the number of times I fell over, judge me by the number of times I got up.
Yes.
So it's all about getting up, and it's all about, like you said, it's embracing failure as a way forward. And often I see people being held back by the fear of failure. And that's a shame, because then it means they're missing out on life. They're missing out on living life to its fullest and following their passion and dreams and interests because of that fear. And one of the things I think as teachers, as educators, we need to help children understand that failure is part of the process. This is how we learn. This is actually a way of learning. There is nothing wrong with it, because I think there is still kind of a stigma and negative association with failure, and we need to shift that into failure being a steps to success. And this is the best way to learn in my mind.
Yeah, well, that's partly because that's what school doesn't like. It's not okay to fail school. Think about when mass education was started. It wasn't okay to be a failure. It wasn't okay to stay in, standard 2 for 7 years, as some of them did, because they didn't pass the grade to go up to the next level. And so therefore, if you were a failure in the school system, you got the lower jobs. You were told you were a dunce. You were told you were stupid and dumb. And so there's a whole lot of stigma from past history of in a school what it means to be a failure. And who do we celebrate? We celebrate in assemblies the children who are doing the good, who are learning and are not necessarily failing as much, because we haven't actually stretched them beyond their capacity. So kids who find school easy because they're not being stretched, they're not being taken outside their comfort zone to learn how to be a risk taker, are at such a disadvantage. And I want to say this, our gifted and talented kids are in this. Our twice exceptional children are part of this because many of them have never experienced what it's like not to know or not to be able to do. And we are doing those kids such a disservice, because how many students do you know who have been in the ducks of the school, or whatever you call it, the top student of the school, who've gone on in life and done not a lot?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with not stretching them enough. And I have example, close at home with my older children who went to a selective school in year 10, and a selective school, they always been, the achieving excellence in the results in public schools. But suddenly when they started at that selective school, everyone was so smart. Everyone was wonderful and achieving a lot. And so the level there was much higher than other schools. And suddenly, oh wow, it's getting difficult. Suddenly, I don't achieve that 90 something grade all the time. And it can be quite shocking, quite an awakening experience. So I definitely agree with you, and I see it happening. And I think with risk taking, there are beautiful things that come up when children are encouraged to take risk, because it's really empowering, and it's really help them develop that resilience and that confidence in just trying new things and not shying away from something that looks challenging.
Yeah, because the whole world is shifting and changing. There is not a lot of certainty in our world right now. So you have to be able to be okay and comfortable with change, with risk, with not knowing. And I want to go back just a minute, Orshel, because you were talking about those gifted and talented and not being stretched as well. And often when they go into an environment where everyone else is at the same level or above, or, they actually experience what's called the imposter syndrome. And they actually experience, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought, maybe I can't do this. And even tonight, I'm going to watch one of my great friends do a comedy piece. She's been learning how to do comedy. It's her first time on stage. And her comment, she is so funny, but her comment to me was, all my classmates are so funny and I'm so scared. And I'm like, yeah, but you're funny too. But because she's in a area with everyone else is funny, she doesn't see that she is. So she's experiencing the imposter syndrome. And she's going to take a responsible risk and get up on that stage tonight. And I've got my pom-poms ready to shout and cheer because the risk taking to do that. And everyone else will be feeling exactly the same way she is, but she's not connecting with that right now. So, so I think responsible risk taking is about or as a teacher, taking children from their comfort zone out into the learning zone, and not too far to the danger zone. But the learning zone is actually a little uncomfortable. It's not, it's exposing us that maybe we don't know, maybe we're not as smart. What if we can't do it? And so, we want students to be able to be in that zone so they can learn to think about what's appropriate in a situation when I'm not sure. How do we think through consequences of behavior and actions? And so this is how we have to help students and why we need to help them to be these responsible risk takers, because in the world, we don't know. There's so much uncertainty right now.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And firstly, well done to your friends. And you're a good friend for cheering her up. This is such a courageous thing to do. So please give her that message. Well done.
I will.
And yes, definitely I agree with you. And I think one of the important things to know that in order to encourage children to take risk, we need to provide them with a safe environment, with an environment where they feel comfortable failing. They feel comfortable with expressing their ideas, knowing that no one is going to judge them or assess them or call them silly or stupid or whatever it is. So that's the first thing that we have to have in the classroom in order for that to happen. And I think another important thing to note is that children learn best from role models and watching how other people behave. It's not what we tell them to do, it's how we do things that they watch and learn from. Yeah. And so I think as teachers, it's important for us as well to be vulnerable and share with our students our failures. What have we done and failed and what we learned from it? How did we took risks and then what happened? How did we felt about it before we took that risk? How it happened, how it ended, what we learned from it. So it's important for us as teachers to open up to our students and share a lot about ourselves as human beings and our journey, because they'll learn best from that.
You're totally correct about that. And if teachers aren't sure about this risk taking, I want you to go into a kindergarten classroom or a year one classroom and watch what happens, because teachers just have to say who wants how many, and those kids they so want to learn, they so want to participate, they so want to be in there, and their hands are up and they're like, pick me, or they sit up straight, because that's often what who we choose, right? They know how you're going to choose. However, go into a year 10 classroom and the teacher says, who knows how many? And very few hands go up. In fact, what you see is this.
Yeah, trying to avoid it. Absolutely.
Yeah, they stop giving eye contact. We have actually diminishing the very behavior we want in our classrooms, which is participation, because often it's too high a risk. Putting your hand up in front of your peers and giving your ideas is high risk. Now, think about this as an educator, as an adult. If you have to stand up in front of your staff meeting, at a faculty meeting, and you need to teach your colleagues something. Maybe you've been on a course and you have to come back and report on it and teach them how to do something. Your heart is going. It's scary. It's frightening. That's exactly what children feel like every single day when we say, read your story to the class. Tell us your opinion. What's the answer to X, Y, Z? And we are putting them in a fear state all the time. So, as you said, the first thing I believe we must do is create that safe classroom environment. So one of the things I do in a classroom is I actually want to value someone who puts their hand up. Because if someone puts their hand up, if someone volunteers an idea, if someone shares in front of their peers, I want to make sure that I have rewarded that behavior, because that's the behavior I want to continue. So 2 things I do. 1, I simply say, thank you. Thank you for taking a risk. Thank you for putting your hand up and not being sure. Thank you for, I'm thanking them for their participation. So the second thing I do, and you talked about not being having judgment, is what teachers do is we often play these unfair games in a classroom. Guess the answer in the teacher's head. Now, this is a win-lose game. When you're looking for one right answer and you already know the answer and they're now trying to guess, it's a win-lose game. They can't win unless they actually know the answer and you're fishing for that answer. So don't play those games. But if you're looking for an answer, here's what I suggest you do. You say, what are the 3 parts of a plant? All right. So, or what's one of the 3 parts of a plant? And so you go around and some kids will call out, maybe they'll call out things. Maybe they put their hands up. And so often what we do is go, oh, yes. Oh, correct. Oh, really? Oh, I'm not sure. You might need to think about that again. Oh, well done. Oh, excellent. Oh, amazing. And so we actually place judgments on their contribution. And so how come one child got a amazing and another child got a well done and another child got a See, what we're actually doing is judging their contribution, and that lowers their ability or willingness to want to contribute more. What we want to do is lower the risk level and raise the participation level. So it doesn't matter if they say pink candy floss and it's got nothing to do with it. We're just going to move on. And so what I do is when I say to students, just call out the answers popcorn style. So I go, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, when I get to the answer I want, why do we stop? Because now we're teaching them, we're just looking for the right answer. So instead, keep going. And so say and then go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Then when you've got a whole lot of ideas, come back and say, let's look at this one. Well, let's look at these 3 ideas as the 3 main parts of a plant. So now I've got higher participation and I've got lower risk in my classroom. So that's just one tiny strategy you can use.
This is fabulous. I love this strategy. I think it's a brilliant one. What else can you share with us?
Yeah. So another one is when you ask a question for students to use what we call wait time. The average teacher waits 1 second before they do one of 3 things when you ask students a question. They either answer the question themselves, they call upon a student to answer the question, or they ask a new question. Now, within 1 second, they do that. And 1 second is not enough time for thinking to occur. So instead, you might use like a think, pair, share and say, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you some time to think about it, some time to pair up and talk about it with a colleague or a friend, and then we'll share. Now, this does several things. One, it gives them time to think. It gives everybody time to think, because those impulsive learners in your classroom, those ones that you're not stretching because they already know the answers. And I spoke yesterday to a highly gifted and talented boy, and he said, I hate school. It's all repetition of stuff I can already do. And so, one, we want to make sure we're not just catering to those children who just know answers. So but for the ones who don't know the answers, we give them time to think. So time to come up with some ideas. If I said to you, what's your number 1 goal in life? That's a really difficult question to answer, because what you have to do inside your head is think about all the goals you have, and then you have to prioritize the goals, and then you've got to go, but is that the right one? And then there's a risk in sharing that one, because you go, no, it's this one. No. So we might pluralize it. What are some of your goals instead? So we're not trying to, but there's a whole lot of thinking that has to go in play for kids to be able to answer a question. So we give them time for that thinking, whatever kind of process you want them to think about. Secondly, we get them to talk about it. Because have you ever noticed that when you talk about something, it clarifies your own thoughts?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So when you start verbalizing it, you suddenly go, oh, is that what I think? Is that how I understand it? And when you hear somebody else verbalize it, then you go, someone else in the class is on the same page. So the risk is now lower. So that when you are finally asked to share, you've had time to think, you've had time to process with somebody else and find out what you really think, because you've verbalized it. And now it's easier to share. And the teacher, if you've used this strategy, I believe you can choose anybody in the class. So it's not hands up anymore. It's like, okay, we've all had a time. Jamie, what do you think today? Georgia, what do you think? So give me some of your ideas, so that we are, again, lowering the risk and increasing the participation.
Yeah, wonderful. I love it. So let's just summarize, because we spoke about a lot of things today. There's a lot of things to digest. So risk-taking, what is it? Basically is being comfortable enough to put yourself in unfamiliar, new situation, and being willing to fail, to give it a go and know that you might fail. And why it is so important? It's very important because it's an integral part of the learning process. We have to take risk and try something new if we want to develop our skills. And therefore, it's something that we have to encourage within the classroom. It also helps our students to develop their resilience and confidence, and really empowers them to go and follow what they want to learn, their passion, their interest, and how we can do it. So the first thing we mentioned is to create a safe environment in the classroom without any judgment, where your students are comfortable with expressing their ideas and opinions and sharing, knowing that no one is gonna say anything about their ideas that they might be silly or stupid. And a few more strategies to follow is, as teachers, to share from our own experience, to be vulnerable and share how we failed, what we learned from it, how we taken risk, how we felt about it, what were the outcomes, etc. Your students will learn so much from it. And also, like Karen mentioned, two wonderful ways to go about it. One is the respond in the same manner for different responses from your students. So don't say to one student excellence, another one okay. Just say thank you for everyone for participating and keep collecting these answers. Don't stop when you get the one that you were looking for. And another one is when you pose question to your student, give them time to pair and think and share, and only then ask them to share their thinking with the rest of the class. Wow, so we covered so much today, and I really encourage educators across the globe to give it a go in the classroom and write to us about your experience to the Thinking Effect podcast at gmail.com. And Karen, if someone wants to get in touch with you and to learn more about the wonderful things that you do, how can they do so?
You can simply go to our website, spectrumeducation.com, and from there it'll launch you into all the different ways you can connect with us and all the different things we do.
This is fabulous. I'll add the link in the description of the podcast so you can easily reach out to Karen and look what she's doing. So Karen, thank you so much for being with us today for this episode. It's great that you shared your wealth of experience and knowledge with everyone. It's very beneficial.
Thank you so much, Auto, and thank you for the way you're showing up in the world and doing amazing work for teachers.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. All right, see you next time. Bye.